The following presentation is brought to you by Discovery Education, leading the world of digital and video learning. Discovery Education, connect to a world of learning.
Christopher Columbus, by far the best-known explorer of the era of exploration, was born in the port city of Genoa, Italy in 1451. Searching for a sea route between Europe and the east coast of Asia, Columbus led the first Spanish expedition across the Atlantic Ocean in 1492. He also led 3 additional transatlantic expeditions between the years 1493 and 1504. Even though Columbus failed to find a route to Asia, he did discover reliable sea routes between Europe and the New World of the Americas. And it was Columbus who founded the first European settlement in the New World since the Viking explorers. He was also the first European to set foot on the continent of South America. Columbus introduced the native people of the New World to the culture of Old World Europe, and to its diseases, greed, and treachery. As a teenager, Christopher Columbus began working as a messenger and as a sailor on trading vessels around the Mediterranean Sea, and he soon became fascinated with ships and the science of navigation. In the 1400s, very few Europeans had traveled to India, the Spice Islands, Japan, or China. Back then, this area of Eastern Asia was known as the Indies. Yet in Europe, there was a great demand for products that originated in those lands, such as silk, spices, jewels, porcelain, and gold. However, these goods were always in short supply because, to reach European markets, they had to be transported by camel caravans over an ancient trade route called the Silk Road, which began in China and ended at ports on the Mediterranean and Black Seas. Trade along this route was highly regulated, and each camel could carry only a few hundred pounds. Columbus and other navigators of his day realized that a single ship would easily transport as much merchandise as a caravan of 600 camels, and that a seafaring trade route to the Indies would be much more profitable than the long overland trek on the Silk Road. In 1476, at the age of 25, Columbus sailed from Genoa, Italy, on his first voyage into the Atlantic. His convoy of ships was bound for England when it was attacked by French pirates off the southern coast of Portugal. During the battle, he fought for his life. But when the pirates set fire to his ship, Columbus knew he would have to swim for shore. Clinging to pieces of wreckage, he managed to reach the Portuguese coast near the seaport of Lagos. By coincidence, this town was only a short distance from Europe's leading navigation school, which had been founded by Prince Henry the Navigator some 60 years earlier. In fact, by the time that Columbus washed up on the Portuguese shore, the country's navigators had already explored and mapped most of the west coast of Africa and were actively searching for an eastern sea route to the Indies. Fortunately for the shipwrecked Columbus, one of his family members was already living in Portugal. His brother, Bartholomew Columbus, was a resident of the nearby city of Lisbon. Bartholomew Columbus divided his time between working as a commercial sailor and as a cartographer or map maker. He also ran a small store specializing in charts, maps, and books that were of interest to navigators. Christopher Columbus made his way to his brother's shop in Lisbon, where he soon became a partner in the business, learning the craft of map-making and adding Portuguese to the Italian and Spanish languages he already spoke. Like his brother Bartholomew, Christopher Columbus also worked as a sailor while he lived in Lisbon. During that time, he visited Portugal's trading posts along the west coast of Africa, and also sailed to the Canary Islands and the Azores. And he may have sailed as far north as Ireland and Iceland. By observing more experienced sailors, he learned many of the sailing techniques necessary to survive in the rough waters of the Atlantic. He also became familiar with the new Portuguese ships called caravels, whose excellent maneuverability and speed allowed their crews to safely sail in the open ocean and the shallow waters near the shore. In 1479, Columbus married the daughter of a wealthy Portuguese sea captain. As a result, his social status improved, and he received valuable maps and charts that had belonged to his wife's father. Columbus developed his theories about geography and seafaring navigation by studying ancient Greek scientific texts, a book about Asia by Marco Polo, and the Old Testament of the Bible. Through his studies, Columbus became convinced that the Indies, meaning the eastern regions of Asia, lay only about 3,500 miles to the west of Europe. Unfortunately, his calculations were incorrect. Columbus estimated the Earth's circumference at only about 75% of its true size, and he believed that most of the planet's surface was land rather than water. And he did not take the continents of North and South America into account because, at that time, the existence of these lands was unknown in Europe. By 1484, Columbus, convinced that his ideas were correct, began work on a plan for what he called the Enterprise of the Indies, which was to be the first expedition across the Atlantic Ocean to Asia. Columbus planned to sail from Europe to the Canary Islands off the coast of Africa. From there, he would sail across the Atlantic to Japan. He estimated that Japan was 2,800 miles from the Canaries, a voyage of about 10 days. Upon reaching Japan, he planned to establish a great trading city. This would be an expensive expedition, and Columbus needed to find a royal patron to pay for his ships and supplies. In preparing his proposal, Columbus decided to ask for full financial backing, including 3 fully equipped ships with crews, plus a 10% share of the trade he generated, a noble rank, the title of admiral, and the right to serve as governor of all the lands he discovered. In 1485, Christopher Columbus submitted his proposal to King John II of Portugal, but the king rejected it as being foolish and too expensive. However, Christopher Columbus would not allow his dreams to be defeated by that rejection. He decided to go to Spain and request assistance from their king and queen. He traveled to Spain with his son Diego and stopped here at the monastery of La Rabida to enroll the boy in its school. Columbus befriended the head of the monastery, and it was through him that he was able to arrange a meeting with King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. They also rejected Columbus's plan, in part because at that time they were preoccupied with trying to unify their country, politically and religiously. After the Spanish throne refused to fund the enterprise of the Indies, Columbus's brother Bartholomew traveled to England and to France to ask for backing from their rulers. However, Bartholomew's attempts also ended in failure, and he sailed back to Portugal. In the meantime, the Spanish rulers, who were staunch Roman Catholics, were attempting to unify their nation by requiring all people of the Jewish and Muslim faiths to either renounce their religious beliefs, leave Spain, or face death. King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella were also focused on conquering the rich Moorish kingdom of Granada, a great center of Muslim culture that was located in what is now southwestern Spain. Early in 1492, Spanish forces took control of Granada. Then, feeling pleased with their victory, Ferdinand and Isabella decided that Columbus's expedition might be good for their country, and they granted him nearly everything he had asked for. On August 3, 1492, Christopher Columbus sailed south out of the small harbor at Palos, Spain, and into the Atlantic Ocean. His fleet consisted of 3 ships. The largest and most imposing of them, the Santa Maria, was approximately 90 feet long and had a crew of 40 men. Its sails were emblazoned with symbols of the cross. They signified Columbus's intention to defend the Catholic faith and to carry its teachings wherever he journeyed. The other 2 ships in the fleet, the Nina and the Pinta, were smaller than the Santa Maria. They were ships of the newer Portuguese design called caravels. Each was about 75 feet long and had a crew of about 24 sailors. After leaving Spain, the small fleet sailed south along the coast of Africa. 9 days later, they reached a Spanish port in the Canary Islands. Here they took on extra barrels of water and food, but were delayed nearly 3 weeks while the rudder of the Pinta was repaired. On September 9, 1492, the fleet sailed west past the outermost of the Canary Islands and into the vast uncharted waters of the Atlantic. According to his calculations, Columbus believed that they would reach islands off the coast of Japan in about 10 days. If his calculations were wrong, he and his crews could easily find themselves far from land without food or water. Everyone involved knew that if the winds died, they would really be in trouble. Even with favorable winds out on the ocean, it was difficult for them to know whether they were actually on course or not, because there were no landmarks to guide them. Columbus was an accomplished sailor and possessed a good compass, but, like most navigators of the time, he hadn't enough experience using celestial navigation instruments to determine their exact location at sea. To follow his course, Columbus relied instead on what was called dead reckoning. This involved continually measuring the distance, speed, and direction that the ships traveled each day. His main navigational tools, in addition to the compass, were the hourglass, or ampolleta, that was used for measuring time, and the traverse board, or toleta, that was used to keep track of the direction and the distance traveled each hour. Day after day, as the fleet sailed westward, the sailors anxiously scanned the horizon for any sign of land. 10 days passed, then 20, then 30, and still there was nothing but the seemingly endless ocean. On October 7th, Columbus took the advice of the captain of the Pinta and changed course slightly to the south. They now headed in the same direction as the flocks of birds that the sailors had seen flying overhead. Shortly after that, Columbus decided that if no land came into view within 3 days, the fleet would return to Spain. At 10 o'clock on the night of October 11th, Columbus was gazing out across the dark waters when he thought he saw flickering lights, but they soon disappeared from view. However, just 4 hours later, one of the sailors sighted land. When it was light, a landing party headed for shore in a small boat, proudly displaying the flag of Spain and the royal banner of the expedition. Overwhelmed with joy, Columbus believed that he had reached the Indies and that his grand ideas had proved to be correct. Little did he know that the land toward which he was heading was about 9,000 miles from Asia. This was an island in the Bahamas, located about 400 miles southeast of Florida. After coming ashore, Columbus gave thanks to God and claimed the land for Spain, naming it San Salvador, or Holy Savior. Native islanders watched in amazement from the nearby forest, believing that the strange men had come from the sky. These native people were members of the Arawak or Taino tribe, who inhabited many of the Caribbean islands. When Columbus and his men explored the forest, they soon encountered the frightened Taino, whom Columbus assumed were Indians, since he believed he was in the Indies. No one could have known at the time that this first meeting between people of the Old World of Europe and people of the New World of the Americas was the beginning of a dramatic shift in world history. The Taino were a gentle and peaceful people, and Columbus befriended them with simple gifts, such as tiny bells, caps, and beads. In the Taino village, Columbus and his men became very interested in the gold jewelry they saw, which they were told came from a nearby island. After spending a few days on San Salvador, Columbus sailed in search of the gold. He took some captured Tainos with him to serve as his guides. In addition to the gold, Columbus also wanted to locate the mainland of Asia as soon as possible. He was carrying a letter from the Spanish monarchs that he was to deliver to the Great Khan, the Emperor of China. Columbus visited a number of islands in the Bahamas, claiming each of them for Spain. The Taino natives they encountered were friendly, but they could not tell the Spaniards exactly where the gold came from. They said Columbus should go to a place they called Colba, or Cuba, and look there. As he sailed along Cuba's lengthy northern coastline, Columbus began to believe that he had reached the Asian mainland. He sent out parties of men to explore inland and was tremendously disappointed when they found no cities, spices, silk, or gold. Columbus continued his search. He sailed toward another large island that he named La Isla Española, or Hispaniola. It was during that voyage that the Pinta became lost in a violent storm and was separated from the other ships. In late December, another fierce storm blew up off the coast of Hispaniola and lasted several days. The crew members did not sleep for 2 nights. Then, during the night of December 24, 1492, the waters grew calm and the exhausted men fell asleep. A young boy was entrusted with the job of steering the ship. While the crew slept peacefully, the Santa Maria ran aground on a reef that the inexperienced boy had failed to see. At the boy's alarmed shout, Columbus scrambled to the deck and roused his sleeping crew. But the Santa Maria had already begun to sink. They were forced to abandon ship near Cap Haitian on the northern part of today's country of Haiti. In the morning, the local Taino Indians helped the sailors salvage what they could from the wreckage. Columbus was grateful for the Taino's help, and to show his appreciation, he placed a string of beads around the neck of the chief and offered him his assistance if he needed it. Early in January of 1493, Christopher Columbus sailed back to Spain in the Niña. His cargo consisted of a few gold ornaments, some parrots, and captive Taino natives that he planned to present to King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. Columbus left 39 volunteer crewmen on Hispaniola to finish building a fort from the wreckage of the Santa Maria and to search for gold. On the homeward voyage, the Pinta and the Niña were reunited and then separated again in a tremendous storm. On March 15, 1493, the Niña sailed into the Spanish port of Palos, and the Pinta arrived just a few hours later. In Spain, Christopher Columbus was honored as a great national hero for all that he had accomplished. Later that year, he traveled back across the Atlantic with a fleet of 17 ships and 1,000 men to establish the first Spanish colony in the New World and to continue searching for the mainland of Asia. Columbus made 2 more trips to the New World in 1498 and 1502. But he never found the route to Asia that he was looking for. Nevertheless, Christopher Columbus's impact extends far beyond the actual accomplishments of his expeditions. Because by searching for a westward sea route to Asia, he changed commonly held beliefs about the world. His expeditions initiated an incredible series of important historical events. After his voyages, other nations, including Portugal, the Netherlands, France, and England, also began sending explorers across the Atlantic. Colonization followed exploration, resulting in enormous population changes as immigrants from Europe settled in the colonies, bringing with them their old world cultural and religious traditions. For the native people of the Americas, the consequences of Columbus's voyages were tragic because they lost their land, became slaves, and died by the millions from European diseases. The historical consequences of Columbus's voyages were tragic also for the millions of Africans who were uprooted and sold as slaves to work in the colonies of the New World. However, for the European colonists, the consequences were generally favorable because most of them increased their landholdings and eventually prospered. So while many revere Christopher Columbus for his persistence, his seamanship, and his discoveries, others criticize him for his role as the founder of the first European colony in the New World, due to the reckless exploitation of people and resources that followed in its wake. But regardless of whether he is admired or scorned, Christopher Columbus was a man who radically changed the course of history.